The red record light blinked on my machine, and the room went quiet in that specific way courtrooms do, like everyone puts a lid on their own breathing. I flexed my fingers under the table, rolled my wrists, and watched the deputy steer a man through the side door like he was handling a live wire. The guy looked like he'd crawled out of an attic and remembered too much on the way down. Dirt in the creases of his knuckles, dried blood at one nostril, eyes open too wide like somebody had taped them. Not my first arraignment, not my first asshole, not my first time typing lies, so clean they looked official. But this felt wrong before anyone said a word. The calendar on my laptop said Tuesday. The docket sheet said State v. Morrow. Trespass, vandalism, simple criminal mischief. Little stuff people do when they're drunk or mad. His wrists were zip-tied, not cuffed. No metal, no chain, like they didn't want anything that could spark. The bailiff, Hollis, didn't joke with the clerk like he usually did. He kept glancing up at the ceiling tiles, like he expected something to seep through. I've been in this courthouse long enough to know its noises. The radiator that knocks, the elevator that groans, the HVAC that sighs like an old person sitting down. This morning it sounded like it was holding its breath. I pulled my steno case closer, unlatched it, and my stomach dipped. There was a folder clipped inside the lid. Thick paper, county seal, my name printed clean at the top like it had always been there. Not from me, not from my agency. I'm the kind of paranoid that counts my own pens. Nobody adds things to my kit. I slid it out like it might bite. One page, block letters, court reporter, procedure update, read before proceeding. I almost laughed. Courts can't fix a broken mic, can't fix the AC, but they can crank out procedure updates like they're printing money. Then I read it, and the laugh stayed stuck in my throat. Rule 1. Do not transcribe any proper names spoken by the respondent. Replace with unintelligible, even if you hear it clearly. Rule 2. If you hear the phrase, open the minute, stop writing immediately. Remove your hands from the keys. Look at the clock. Count until the second hand moves again. Rule 3. Never type the phrase, I consent. If it is said, mark a hard break and request clarification after the session. Do not capture it. Rule 4. Do not describe sounds. No tud escribir craquet. Use noise only. Rule 5. If the courtroom lights dim or flicker, do not look at any illuminated exit signage. Keep your eyes on your screen. If asked to read back, refuse. Say you need to verify the record. At the bottom, in a different font. Different spacing too, like it got pasted in from somewhere else. If you break a rule, the record will continue without you. I stared at that line until it felt like the letters were pushing into my eyes. I've seen plenty of CYA memos. This wasn't one. This read like somebody had tried to write a warning without using the word monster. I flipped the page over. Second sheet. No lettereath. Just a yellow sticky note slapped onto it, half peeled, like someone had ripped it off a desk in a hurry. Don't be brave. Don't be curious. Don't fix it. The last reporter tried to help, and we scooped what was left of her off the vents. No signature. Just a date from 7 weeks ago and a thumb smear dragged through black ink, like whoever wrote it pressed too hard and their finger slipped. I shoved the whole thing back into the folder like it was hot. My first instinct was to pack up and walk. My second instinct, stronger, stupider, was to tell myself it was some fucked up training exercise. Some prank the clerk's office cooked up because everyone in government is bored and hates happiness. Then the judge came in and everyone stood. Judge Acker sat down like the bench weighed 1,000 pounds. He didn't do the friendly good morning. He didn't even adjust his robe. His eyes flicked to the defendant, then the prosecutor, then me. He gave one small nod like we were already late to something. The clerk called the case. Morrow, she said, and her voice cracked on it. The deputy guided the man to the table. He didn't shuffle. He didn't stumble. He moved like his joints worked fine, but he wasn't really inside them. The public defender leaned in, whispered something, got nothing back. The man just stared at my machine like he knew what it did. I set my fingers on the keys. The steno felt familiar, comforting. Muscle memory. The one part of me that stays calm when people are falling apart. The red record light blinked steady. Proceedings started normal. Charges read. Rights advised. The prosecutor tried to sound bored and routine, like this wasn't the only thing keeping his heart from jumping out of his throat. Then Judge Acker asked the man to state his name for the record. The man lifted his head. He didn't look at the judge. He looked straight at me, like the judge was just furniture and I was the person who mattered. He spoke into the room. Not loud, clear, carefully shaped. It wasn't Morrow. It wasn't any name I've ever heard. It sounded like a hinge being forced open in slow motion, like the sound of a door you don't want to open because something heavy is leaning on the other side. The clerk's pen froze in mid-scratch. The prosecutor's mouth twitched like he'd tasted pennies. Hollis took one step back without meaning to. Rule 1. My fingers hovered. Every part of my job is capture everything. Don't interpret. Don't protect. Don't censor. Just write what happened. My thumbs wanted to fire. I typed. Unintelligible. I felt stupid typing it. I felt like a kid covering their eyes and pretending that meant they couldn't be seen. The man's gaze flicked down to my real-time screen. He saw the bracketed word. His lips curled, not quite a smile, more like satisfaction. Like I'd done something he wanted. Judge Acker didn't acknowledge it. His jaw set tighter. Do you understand the charges as stated? He asked, voice clipped. The man nodded once, slow. The judge continued. Do you wish to waive formal reading, enter a plea, request counsel? The man cut in, soft as a lullaby. I consent. Rule 3. It hit the room like a bad smell. My chest tightened. My fingers locked above the keys. For half a second, I couldn't get air. Judge Acker leaned forward, and the fear under his authority showed through like a stain. Consent to what, sir? The man didn't blink. He kept his eyes on me like the question had been asked in my direction. He said, gentle, like he was teaching a kid to tie their shoes. Open the minute. Rule 2. My hands came off the machine so fast it felt like someone yanked them. I grabbed the edge of the table and squeezed until my nails bit. I forced my eyes up to the big analog clock above the judge. The second hand ticked. 1, 2, 3. On 4, the fluorescence dimmed. Not off, just down like somebody was sliding a dial. The corners of the room softened. Shadows thickened under the tables. My eyes tried to snap to the exit signs at the back like a reflex. Green means go. Green means out. Green means safety. Rule 5. I kept my gaze glued to my screen. White text on black. The last thing I typed. Defendant. Unintelligible. Behind me, the vent above the jury box made a sound like a throat clearing. Not the HVAC rattle. Not the usual sigh. Something wet in it. Rule 4. I didn't type wet. I didn't type anything. My hand stayed off the keys. The clock ticked again. The second hand moved. The lights steadied like nothing had happened. I slid my hands back onto the steno and started typing again like a good little machine. My heart didn't get the memo. It slammed in my ribs like it wanted out. Judge Acker called a recess. Not the normal kind, not 10 minutes. More like he needed the building to stop looking at us. People stood too fast. The prosecutor leaned close to Hollis, mouth covered, whispering through his knuckles. The clerk stared down at her keyboard like it might give her permission to quit. The man sat perfectly still, smiling faintly, wrists zip-tied, like the whole thing was a warm-up. I pushed my chair back to stand, and Hollis stepped into my space like a wall. Stay put, he muttered, like he was telling a dog not to bolt. I need the bathroom, I said, because that's what you say when you're trying not to say I'm about to fucking run. His eyes didn't soften. No, what do you mean no? I hissed low. He leaned closer without moving his lips much. Don't leave your station. I stared at him, waiting for the punchline. There wasn't one. My eyes dropped to the defendant's wrists. The zip ties had tightened, not from movement. They had cinched down on their own, biting into skin. The skin around them didn't look like skin. It looked doughy, swollen, soft, like bread left too long in water. The man flexed his fingers and the ties creaked. Under his skin, something moved along the tendons, slow, crawling bulges like worms pushing through mud. My stomach did a hard flip. Jesus, I whispered before I could stop myself. The man's eyes flicked to me, and for a second that faint smile sharpened, like he liked being witnessed. Hollis followed my gaze and went pale. He jerked his eyes away like he'd burned them. The clerk swallowed hard. "Please just don't," she said, barely audible. Not to me, to the whole situation. Judge Acker came back early. No 10-minute recess. More like he'd made a decision and didn't want to sit with it. His voice stayed even, but it shook at the edges. "We're proceeding," he said. "Carefully. Proceed carefully." In a courtroom, like we were defusing something. The prosecutor stood, tried to read the charges again, and stumbled over words he'd read 100 times in his life. His mouth looked thick. His tongue looked like it didn't want to cooperate. He started to say the defendant's name, the real one, the hinge sound, and choked halfway through like the syllables grabbed him by the throat. Hollis stepped in and squeezed his shoulder hard enough to leave a dent through the suit jacket. "A warning. Don't say it." The prosecutor corrected fast. "Mr. Morrow," he said, like saying the fake name could pin the man to something human. The man's smile widened, patient, like a teacher listening to a kid give the wrong answer. Judge Acker's eyes cut to me. "Reporter," he said, read back the respondent's last statement. "Rule 5, the read-back part. My throat went dry. You don't argue with a judge. You don't refuse. Not in open court." But the rule sheet was in my case like a loaded gun, and every hair on my arm stood up. "I need to verify the record, Your Honor," I said, and it came out steadier than I felt. Judge Acker's eyes tightened like he hated that I'd made him do this in public. He didn't push. He just nodded once like he'd expected it. The man chuckled. It didn't come from his mouth. It came from a vent behind me, through metal slats, warm and soft like breath on your ear. Rule 4. I typed. Noise. My fingers shook so hard the machine clacked. Judge Acker cleared his throat and pivoted into safe territory. Bail him out. Hearing dates. Terms and conditions. Paperwork. Anything that didn't require him to look at the man like he was a person. The man leaned forward slightly. The zip ties creaked like they were being tested. "You're all minutes," he said, almost fond. I typed it without thinking, because it wasn't one of the rules, and I'm a fucking professional, and I'm supposed to capture speech. The moment the line appeared on my screen, the fluorescence flickered in a quick stutter, like the building recognized the word. Judge Acker's pen rolled off the bench and hit the wood with a small clack. The clerk whispered, "No," like she was praying. The man watched my fingers like he was watching a lock turn. He wanted more. He wanted the record to become a ladder. I tried to keep it boring. I tried to keep it clean. I tried to be a machine. Then he said another proper name. Not his. Something else. Another hinge sound. Another thing that didn't belong in a human mouth. My brain tried to hear it and slid off it like oil. Rule 1. I typed. Unintelligible. For the first time, his smile faltered. Not into rage, into hurt. Like I'd insulted him. The air changed. Not colder. Not hotter. Just thicker. Like humidity before a storm. The exit signs at the back of the room didn't flicker. They did something worse. They seemed brighter, like my eyes wanted to adjust around them. Like they were calling me. Rule 5. I kept my gaze on my screen. I forced it. I blinked hard like that would keep my eyes honest. The man's voice dropped, soft as paper tearing. Open the minute. Rule 2. Hands off keys. Clock. 1, 2, 3. On 4, I heard something under my table. A scraping sound. Fingernails on plastic. Slow, deliberate, like whatever it was wanting me to notice without letting me see. My skin went tight over my bones. I froze with both hands gripping the table edge. My eyes stayed on the clock until my vision started to swim. The scraping moved along the underside of the desk, closer to my knees. Then it paused like it was listening too. Someone behind me made a strangled sound, like a cough swallowed wrong. Rule 4. I didn't type cough. I didn't type gag. I typed noise. The second hand ticked again, and the scraping stopped instantly, like it obeyed the clock. I heard Judge Acker exhale like he'd been holding his breath, and it came out shaky. He was staring past me, not at me, past my shoulder, at the wall behind my station. His face looked blank in that way people look when they're trying not to look. I didn't turn around. I didn't. My muscles screamed to twist and see what had crawled under there. I kept my eyes on my screen like it was a life raft. The man spoke again, almost amused. Read it back. Rule 5. Judge Acker's jaw flexed. No, he said. One sharp syllable. We're not doing that. The man's smile cracked, not into anger, into disgust, like we were refusing to complete a ritual. He leaned back, shoulders settling, and said clearly, like a bell, I consent. Rule 3. My hands refused to move, not even to type the hard break. My fingers locked. The prosecutor slammed both palms on the table like he could physically shove the words back into the man's mouth. The fuck are we doing? He snapped, voice too loud, cracking. Your Honor, this is not. Quiet, Judge Acker barked, and it came out meaner than it had any right to, because mean is what you do when you're scared. Hollis took one step toward the defendant, then stopped like he'd hit an invisible line. The vent behind me made that throat-clearing sound again, except now it carried something like laughter, soft, breathy, close. The man said the other name again, the hinge sound, the one the prosecutor had choked on, and Hollis's face went slack. Not scared slack, not confused slack, empty, his eyes unfocused like a TV losing signal. Hollis, the clerk whispered, and her voice broke. He didn't look at her. He turned, slow, like he was moving underwater, and walked toward the wall vent near the jury box. Judge Acker half stood. Deputy. Hollis didn't hear him. He pressed his mouth to the metal grate. Not a kiss. A push. Hard. He shoved his lips between the slats like he was trying to force himself through. The sound that came out of him wasn't a scream. It was a wet, muffled grunt like he'd swallowed it. Rule 4. I typed. Noise. His teeth hit metal. I heard a crack. His tongue pushed out, pale and trembling, trying to snake between the slats like it knew the way. The prosecutor surged forward, grabbed Hollis's belt, and yanked. Hollis didn't fight like a person. He fought like something anchored. His hands clawed at the wall, fingernails skittering on painted cinder block. The clerk stood up so fast her chair clattered. Stop him, stop! Judge Acker came fully upright, robe flaring. Bailiff, get him off. The words fell apart because the sound in the room fell apart. It wasn't one noise. It was a pile of them. Metal whining, skin tearing, the clerk sobbing starting to climb, the prosecutor grunting with effort, papers sliding off tables from the movement. I didn't type any of the specifics. I typed noise over and over until my wrist ached. Hollis shoved harder, and then his tongue went through. Not between slats. Through the metal like it had turned soft for him. Like the grate accepted him. The prosecutor gagged and let go, slipping back in a smear of something dark on the floor. The man at the table watched the whole thing like he was watching a show he'd paid for. His smile held steady, calm, almost pleased. This wasn't about escape. This wasn't about court. This was pressure. He wanted me to break. Because if I broke, if I gave it clean words, proper names, consent, then the thing happening in this room would become official. It would stop being an incident and start being a record. A minute. Not time. Not 60 seconds. Court minutes. The written summary. The thing clerks file and judges sign, and everyone treats like truth because it's in the system. The man didn't want freedom. He wanted entry. He wanted the record to accept him the way a body accepts an infection. He wanted his name in black and white where it could live forever. And he'd already started. Hollis went still with his cheeks smashed against the grate, eyes wide open, drool leaking red down his chin. Something tugged from inside the duct. His neck stretched wrong, skin pulling tight like it was being drawn through a narrow hole. The clerk made a sound like she was trying to swallow her own scream. The prosecutor backed away, hands up, whispering, what the fuck, what the fuck, what the fuck, like it was a prayer. Judge Acker stared at me over the bench. Not Hollis, at me. Because he knew what the rules meant. He knew what the sheet meant. He knew the only thing between this being a nightmare and this being a legal fact was what I put on my screen. The man's gaze slid back to my fingers, patient and hungry. "Write it," he said softly. "Itesti bile." My brain ran through the rules like a rosary. Don't type names. Don't type consent. Don't describe sounds. Don't look at exit signs. Don't read back. My body wanted to stand up, flip the table, sprint out, never look at another keyboard again. But Hollis was still pressed to the wall like he'd been kissed by something inside it. And Judge Acker was watching me like I was the only person with a weapon that mattered. The man smiled a little wider. I felt my hands float back over the keys. I didn't decide to be brave. I decided to be cruel. I decided to do the one thing the rule sheet told me not to do, because suddenly I understood why the warning was written the way it was. Not because the name was dangerous to hear, because the name was a hook, and hooks work both ways. My fingers hovered. The real-time cursor blinked, waiting. Hollis made a low, bubbling sound through the grate like his mouth was filling up with something that wasn't air. The man leaned forward, zip ties creaking, eyes bright. "Go on," he whispered. "Make me real." I placed my fingertips on the steno keys and started the first stroke of his true name. Felt it click under my skin like I was pulling a latch I'd been told never to touch, while the red record light blinked steady like it didn't give a shit about any of us. The first stroke landed like a wrong prayer. My machine rattled under my hands, and the real-time cursor jumped, and there was on my screen letters that didn't feel like letters. It looked like a name the way a scar looks like handwriting. Too many hard angles. Too many doubled consonants that shouldn't sit next to each other. My brain tried to pronounce it and slid away like it hit glass. The second it appeared, the whole room snapped bright. Not the lights came back on. They were already on. This was different. Like the fluorescence got fed. Like the building inhaled and finally filled its lungs. Hollis's body stopped moving. Not because he got pulled free. Because the thing inside the duct stopped pulling. His stretched neck recoiled in one nasty, elastic jerk. He hit the floor like a dropped coat, cheeks slapping tile, tongue hanging wrong, a thick string of spit and blood dangling from the grate like a ribbon. I didn't type blood. I typed noise because my fingers were already shaking and I didn't trust myself not to start describing everything out of spite. The defendant, Mr. Morrow, the liar name, made a small satisfied sound. He leaned forward like a man listening to a lock click. His eyes stayed on my screen, and his smile spread like he'd just tasted something sweet. "See," he whispered. "That's it. That's all you had to do." Judge Acker slammed his hand on the bench. "Stop. Stop talking." The prosecutor finally found his legs and stepped between the defendant and my station like he could block words with a suit jacket. "Reporter," he hissed at me without turning. "What did you just type?" I didn't answer. I couldn't. My mouth felt glued. The clerk was crying silently, shoulders shaking, hands hovering over her keyboard like she didn't know what keys did anymore. Hollis gurgled once on the floor and then went still. He was alive. His chest rose, barely, but his eyes stared at the ceiling tiles like he'd been left behind inside his own head. The defendant's gaze lifted, almost reverent, and he spoke toward the ceiling. "Good," he said. "Now we're in it." Judge Acker looked like he was going to vault the bench and strangle him. Instead, he pointed at me, sharp and shaking. "Do not type another character," he snapped. I swallowed. I stared at my screen. The name sat there like a stain. The defendant's smile tightened, like he could feel Acker trying to pull the room back into normal rules. "You can't stop her now," the defendant said softly. "It's recorded." The prosecutor snapped, "Shut up," then louder to Acker. "Your Honor," in the session. "End it. Now." Acker's eyes flicked to the red record light. He looked like he wanted to rip my machine off the table and throw it. But he didn't, because he knew the worst part of all this wasn't the typing. It was the idea that the record had its own momentum, that it would continue if you tried to cut it off wrong. My hands hovered above the keys again, and I did it, because there was no room left to be careful. I typed a new line, all caps, the way you type things that are meant to sound official even when you're making them up. Respondent is hereby sealed. I didn't pause to wonder if that was the right phrase. It came out of some old instinct, some half-remembered talk from my grandmother. She did records in another county and used to say paperwork is its own kind of power. Sealed is a word with weight. Seal means locked. Seal means buried. Sealed means nobody gets access without permission. The defendant's smile twitched. Behind me, the vent made a cough noise, not laughter now, irritated like something had swallowed dust. The judge's face changed. Not relieved, not hopeful, more like, oh, you actually did it. You actually swung at it. The prosecutor lunged toward my desk. What the fuck are you doing? Hollis's hand twitched on the floor like a dead fish. The clerk let out a sharp sob and covered her mouth. The defendant's shoulders rose like he was about to stand. Under his skin, that slow crawling movement rippled up his forearms, and the zip ties creaked like stressed plastic. Don't, the defendant said, still soft, but the room heard it. Even the walls heard it. That's not your authority. I didn't look at him. I kept my eyes on my screen. I kept my fingers moving because if I stopped now, he'd pour into the gap. I slammed my foot down on the steno pedal and dumped my real-time feed straight into the court's digital archive. Not my laptop, not my personal storage, not my agency copy, the county server, the place where records go to live whether anyone wants them or not. My upload window popped up. The prosecutor grabbed my chair back and yanked. The wheels squealed. Stop, he shouted. Stop, she can't. Judge Acker roared. Don't touch her. The prosecutor froze, breath wild, like he wanted to fight a judge and also wanted to run. The defendant's eyes locked on the progress bar. It crawled. 10%, 20%. He stopped smiling. His face tightened like he could feel the words turning from a doorway into a box. What are you sending? He asked, and for the first time his voice had an edge. Where are you sending it? I didn't answer. I typed the seal line again beneath the first one, like repeating it could drive nails into wood. Respondent is hereby sealed. The lights flickered once. The exit signs at the back flared bright green in my peripheral vision like a flare gun. Rule 5 screamed in my head, and I kept my eyes down. Kept my eyes on the black and white. Kept my eyes on the only thing that was still under my control. The upload hit 70%. The defendant leaned forward and the zip ties snapped. Not clean. They stretched first like warm plastic and then popped with a sound that made my teeth vibrate. His wrists came free, and I saw the skin where the ties had bitten. It wasn't raw. It looked melted. He stood, and it wasn't a human stand. His shoulders didn't roll. His spine didn't stack. He just rose like someone pulled him up by the crown of his skull. Judge Acker backed up one step on the bench like a man retreating from a ledge. Hollis's body on the floor gave a little jerk like a puppet in a box. The prosecutor grabbed a chair like he might swing it. Get down, he yelled stupidly, like you can order gravity. The defendant turned his head toward him with slow disgust. You don't speak in this minute, he said, and the prosecutor's mouth stopped working. His lips moved. His jaw moved. No sound came out. His face went red, then purple, eyes bulging as he tried to force words through. The clerk made a high, thin sound like panic turning into something worse. Judge Acker banged his gavel once, hard, like the crack could break whatever spell was forming. All parties will remain seated, he snapped, voice booming and shaking, because judges only know one way to fight. Pretend the rules are stronger than fear. The defendant smiled at him like he was being adorable. Then he looked back at me. Read it, he said. My stomach clenched. Read my name back, he said, and the way he said it made the room tilt. Like he was not asking, like he was collecting. I kept typing, noise, because Hollis was making wet throat sounds again, and I could feel the vent behind me warming like breath. Reporter, Judge Acker barked. Stop typing. I didn't. I couldn't. If I stopped, the only thing left would be him. The progress bar hit 95%. The defendant's expression shifted into something I hadn't seen yet. Alarm. Not fear like a person. Fear like an animal that knows it's being cornered. He took one step toward my station. The air thickened. The fluorescent lights dimmed, slow and heavy, like someone was dragging that slider down again. Rule 5. Don't look at the exit signs. Keep your eyes on your screen. My eyes burned for not moving. The defendant's shadow stretched across the floor toward me like it had its own legs. "Undo it," he said, voice sharper now. "You don't get to file me." The vent behind me made a scraping noise like fingernails were turning. Under my desk, that same slow crawl started again. Plastic on metal, nail on wood, like something was climbing up toward my knees. I clenched my jaw until it hurt. The prosecutor finally found his voice again in a rasp, and it came out raw like he'd torn something. "Your Honor." Judge Acker cut him off. "Bailiff." Hollis didn't move. There wasn't a bailiff anymore. Not the kind you call and get help from. The defendant took another step. His face looked wrong up close, like the skin didn't fit the bones. Like it was an imitation pulled too tight. "Open the minute," he said low. Rule 2. Hands off keys. Clock. I yanked my hands away and forced my eyes up. The second hand ticked. 1, 2, 3. On 4, the scratching under my desk reached my chair leg. I felt a small bump against the metal, like something testing it. My throat tightened. On 5, the fluorescence flickered, and in that dim, the defendant's eyes looked too reflective, like they belonged to something that hunts. On 6, the vent behind me exhaled warm air that smelled like old paper and pennies and rot. The second hand ticked again. The lights steadied. The scratching stopped like it got yanked back. My hands dropped onto the keys again, and I hit a command to force the upload through like shoving a stuck door. 100%. The bar filled. The little window blinked and said, "Upload complete." The defendant froze. His eyes widened, and it wasn't acting. It wasn't performance. For the first time since he'd come into the room, he looked like something had surprised him. "No," he said, and the word came out with weight, like it hit the walls and left dents. Judge Acker's face didn't brighten, but something in his posture unlocked, like he'd been braced for impact, and now he had a split second to move. "Now," he snapped, in the session. The clerk's hands flew to her keyboard. She jabbed at something, tears running down her face, and the court recording system gave a sharp beep that sounded like a dying smoke alarm. The red record light on my steno blinked hard, then it went dark. Not off. Dark like it had never existed. My real-time screen went blank. For one stupid second, my heart lifted because my body is dumb and it loves the idea of a clean stop. Then the screen filled with text by itself. Not my strokes, not my translation. Perfect typed English, line by line, like a printer that doesn't need paper. "The record continues without you." My stomach dropped through the floor. My hands went on the keys. I tried to lift them and couldn't feel my fingers. Judge Acker said my name, my real name, and it sounded far away, like he was shouting down a hallway. The clerk screamed, and it came out muffled like someone had put a pillow over my ears. The prosecutor made a choking sound, and I couldn't bring myself to type even noise anymore. The defendant's mouth opened like he was going to scream, but no sound came out. His body shimmered, not in a magical way, in a filing way, like ink dispersing in water. The vent behind me inhaled. The ductwork made a deep suction sound, like the building was swallowing. The typed text kept marching. It wrote my name at the top of the screen in the header where my reporter info usually sits. Then it erased it. Backspace threw it clean and patient, like deleting a word from a document. My breath caught. The room's edges faded, not blacking out, just losing contrast, like someone turned the saturation down. People moved, but their movements didn't hold my attention anymore. Like my brain couldn't grab onto them. Judge Acker stepped down from the bench. His shoes hit the floor hard, but the sound felt distant. He reached for my shoulder, and I watched his hand come toward me and slide. Not through me, not ghost bullshit, more like he couldn't get purchase. Like I was there, but I didn't have friction. Like my presence wasn't sticking. The defendant's body blurred harder. His skin smeared into the air in streaks, pulled toward the vents in thin ribbons like smoke being sucked into an exhaust fan. His eyes stayed locked on me the whole time, furious now because he understood what I'd done. I didn't give him a voice. I gave him a file. And files don't need consent. Files don't need a ritual. Files get stored. His mouth formed words I couldn't hear. His jaw strained. His throat flexed like he was screaming, and nothing came out but wind. A blast of cold air punched through the room. Papers lifted and scattered. Folders flipped open. Loose exhibits flew like birds. The exit signs flared so bright green they painted the walls. Rule 5. Don't look. I kept my eyes down until they watered. Hollis's neck snapped back in a normal length with a wet pop, and he rolled onto his side like a man waking from anesthesia. He blinked slow, confused. His tongue was ruined. He couldn't scream. He could only breathe in wet, rasping pulls. The defendant didn't vanish. He got filed. The last of him smeared up into the vent behind me, and the metal grate rattled like something hit it from the inside, once, twice, furious. Then the courthouse went quiet in the normal way. Lights normal, air normal, people screaming normal. Judge Acker grabbed my shoulders again, shouting at me, and his hand slid off like he was trying to grab a wet bar of soap. He stared at his own palms like he didn't trust them. "Look at me," he shouted. I tried. I swear to God I tried. But my eyes wouldn't lift. My eyes stuck to the screen like it was the only thing still real. The screen went blank again. Then it typed one last line in the same perfect font. Reporter, sealed. The clerk made a sound like she was going to throw up. The prosecutor stumbled backward into a chair, breathing hard like he'd been underwater, and just surfaced. Judge Acker's face collapsed, not into tears, into something worse, resignation. Because he understood what sealed meant. It meant I'd become part of the record, not as a person, as a status. I stood up on legs that didn't feel like mine. My chair rolled back with a squeal that sounded too loud. Nobody tried to stop me. Not because they were kind, because they looked right through me. I walked out of the courtroom while people yelled. I passed the clerk station. She looked at my face, and her eyes slid away like she couldn't focus on me. "Hollis," Judge Acker called, voice rough. "Hollis, stop her." Hollis tried to push himself up. He got one knee under him, then collapsed again, gagging soundlessly, hands clutching his throat like he could squeeze his tongue back into shape. The green exit signs burned above the double doors like they were laughing. I stepped into the hallway. The air in the hall felt warmer, cleaner, like the courthouse was trying to pretend it didn't just eat something. I finally let myself look an exit sign. It didn't feel like safety. It felt like an eye. Outside, the sun hit my face and the normal world didn't flinch. Cars passed. Someone laughed into a phone. A guy in a suit walked by with coffee and didn't even glance at me. I stood on the courthouse steps shaking, and it took me a full minute to realize people were literally walking through my personal space like I wasn't there. A woman clipped my shoulder with her tote bag and didn't react. "No sorry. No excuse me." Nothing. I lifted my hand and waved it in front of a man's face, and he didn't blink. Just kept walking. I tried to speak. My voice came out, but it sounded thin, like it didn't push air, like it stayed close to my mouth. "Hey," I said louder. "Hey." Nobody turned. I ran my fingers over the skin on my forearm. I could feel myself. I wasn't numb. I wasn't dead. I was still in my body, but the world had stopped indexing me. I walked 2 blocks to my agency because it was muscle memory and panic. I didn't know what else to do. The receptionist looked up when I came in, smiled at nothing, then frowned like she'd felt a draft. I stepped to her desk. "Hey, it's me." She blinked at me, then past me, like she was looking for the source of sound. "I need to talk to Marlene," I said. "Now." She stared at her monitor. "Do you have an appointment?" "Stop," I snapped. "Stop fucking around. You know who I am." She flinched like she'd heard something harsh in the air, but her eyes still didn't lock on mine. "Sir, ma'am, what is your name?" My gut went cold. I said my name. It sounded normal in my own ears. The receptionist's face stayed blank. "That's not in our system," she said, calm as a script. Can you spell it? I spelled it. Her fingers tapped keys. She frowned harder. No record. Marlene hired me, I said, voice rising. I've been here 2 years. She kept her smile glued on like customer service armor. I'm going to need you to lower your voice or I'll call security. Call them, I said, leaning in, heart banging. Call whoever you want. Bring them out here. Ask them if they can see me. She picked up the phone anyway, I still not meeting mine, and when she spoke it was that bland, practice tone. Hi, can I get security to the front desk? There's someone making a disturbance. Someone, not me. Someone. Security came fast. A tall guy I'd seen around, name tag, walkie on his shoulder. He slowed when he hit the lobby like he expected to see a person. His eyes scanned past me, then paused like he'd hit a wall of nothing. What's the problem? He asked the receptionist. She pointed vaguely at the air near me, not at my face. Right there. He stepped closer and his expression tightened, confused. He lifted his hand like he was about to put on my shoulder, and his fingers stopped short, hovering like he didn't want to touch something he couldn't see. I need you to leave, he said, and his voice was aimed at the space, not me. I laughed, sharp and ugly. You can't even look at me. His brow furrowed. Ma'am, sir, whoever you are, I'm asking you to leave. I leaned forward until my face was inches from his. I could see the pores on his nose. I could smell his coffee breath. Can you see this? I said, and I slapped my own cheek hard enough to sting. He flinched at the sound. He didn't react to the motion. His eyes didn't follow my hand. He swallowed, Adam's apple bobbing. Okay, he said, like he was trying to stay calm. Okay, there's no one here. I'm hearing a voice. The receptionist's eyes widened. What do you mean, no one? He held up a hand to shut her up, still staring at the empty air. I'm hearing a voice, he repeated, and his tone went thin. But I don't see anybody. My skin crawled. I backed up slowly because suddenly this wasn't just they can't see me. It was I'm a voice in a room. A disembodied disturbance. A record. I turned and walked out before he could decide I was a problem worth tackling. I went to the county clerk's office next. I stood in line like a person. I watched people ahead of me slide forms under the glass and get stamps and get answers. I watched the clerk roll her eyes at someone's missing fee and watched her smile at a toddler. When it was my turn, I stepped to the window. She didn't look up at me. She looked at her screen. Next, she said, bored. I need my employment record, I said. From the courthouse. I'm a contracted court reporter. I need the file under my name. She sighed like I'd asked for her kidney. ID. I slid my license under the glass. She picked it up, and it wasn't like she couldn't see it. She could see the card. She could read the text. Her eyes moved over it. Her face didn't register the photo like it belonged to me. She frowned. This doesn't match any record. It's me, I said, voice cracking. That's my face. She stared past the glass like she was trying to locate who was speaking. Who is speaking? My throat tightened. I am. She laughed once, nervous, then stopped when she realized she wasn't joking. Ma'am, she called over her shoulder, voice rising. Can you come here a second? A supervisor walked over, older woman with a tight bun and a face that looked like it had never enjoyed anything. What? She snapped. The clerk pointed at the air in front of the window. I'm hearing someone. The supervisor stared at the empty space. Who's there? I swallowed hard. I need my record. The supervisor's eyes narrowed. This isn't funny. It's not, I said, and my voice shook. Please. The supervisor leaned forward, and I watched her eyes, her actual eyes, slide right over my face like my features were oil. There's nobody there, she said, cold. I'm here, I insisted. I'm standing right in front of you. The supervisor's lips tightened. Either someone is playing a speaker prank, or you need medical help. I'm not doing this at my window. I slammed my hand on the counter. The sound cracked loud in the office. People looked. Heads turned toward the sound. Not toward me. Someone whispered, "Where'd that come from?" The supervisor stiffened. "Security," she barked. Two deputies from the back started moving, hands already on their belts. I backed away, heart hammering, and the weirdest part was nobody's eyes tracked my movement. They tracked nothing, like a group of dogs hearing a noise but not seeing the squirrel. I walked out before I became a disturbance again. I went home. My key slid in my apartment lock and turned like normal. The deadbolt clicked. The hallway smelled like stale cooking and carpet cleaner. Inside, my place looked normal. My shoes by the door, my jacket on the chair, my mail on the counter. I picked up my phone and pulled up my email. The account login failed. Wrong password. I reset it. The reset link never came. I checked my other email. Same. I tried my bank app. User not found. I stared at that message until my vision blurred. I tried calling my own number from the landline I still kept because I'm old and paranoid. It rang. My voicemail picked up, but the greeting wasn't mine. It was the default robotic greeting, like the account had been wiped. I sat on the floor with my back against the couch and tried to breathe like a person. In, out, in, out. The vent above my kitchen made a small sound. Not the normal hum, a throat clearing. I froze. The sound wasn't loud. It wasn't dramatic. It was intimate, like someone in the next room signaling they were about to speak. I got up and walked to the vent. I stared at the metal slats. Nothing moved. I put my ear close and listened. At first I heard only the normal airflow. Then, faint, under it, a whispery scrape like paper being turned, like a file being opened. My mouth went dry. I stepped back. Stop, I said to the vent because I didn't have any better idea. Stop, I sealed you. It's over. The vent exhaled warmer air. And I swear to God I heard my own name, quiet, wrong, like it was being read by a voice that had never had a throat. That it broke apart into that hinge sound. The true name. I backed away, so fast I hit the counter. I didn't sleep. I sat on my bed with my steno machine in my lap like a weapon and stared at the wall until dawn. When my agency still didn't recognize me the next morning, I drove to the courthouse. I walked straight through security because the detector didn't beep for a person it couldn't perceive. A deputy looked up when the gate clicked, frowned like he'd felt a draft, and went back to his phone. I went to the clerk's office and stood in front of the bulletin board where they post calendars and docket changes. My name wasn't on anything. Of course it wasn't. I went to courtroom 3 because my feet remember the route. The hallway smelled like floor polish and old paper. The exit signs glowed green at every turn like they were waiting. I forced my eyes forward, forced my thoughts away from them. Courtroom 3 was locked. I heard voices inside anyway. Normal court noise. A judge speaking, a lawyer arguing, someone's chair squeaking. I leaned close to the door. Through the crack, I heard a familiar voice. Judge Acker. My stomach lurched. I pounded on the door. The sound echoed down the hall. No one opened. I pounded again, harder. The voices inside didn't pause. I pressed my face to the narrow glass window in the door and looked in. The courtroom was full, but it wasn't the same. The bench was there. The tables. The same ugly carpet. Different people. Judge Acker sat on the bench, robe on, face gray, eyes older overnight. The prosecutor from yesterday sat at the table, hands shaking as he shuffled papers. The clerk sat at her station, eyes swollen, jaw clenched like she'd bitten through her fear and swallowed it. Hollis sat in the bailiff chair. His face looked wrong. Not injured wrong. Not bruised. Blank, like someone had erased a layer. His tongue was gone. He kept his mouth closed, chin tucked, eyes fixed straight ahead. And above them, the ceiling vent, same vent, looked clean, but I could feel it, like a presence pressing behind it. Judge Acker spoke, and I couldn't hear the exact words through the glass, but I saw his eyes dart once to my old station. My station was occupied, not by a person, by an empty chair with a new steno machine sitting on the table like it was waiting for hands. The red record light blinked on that machine, steady. A clerk walked by in the hallway behind me and shivered. "It's cold," she muttered to nobody. I turned from the window, heart slamming, and I did the only thing I could think of. I went to public access. The courthouse has those kiosks in the lobby where you can look up case minutes. People use them for dates and filings and to lurk on their exes. I stood at the kiosk and typed in yesterday's case number. State v. Morrow. It popped up immediately, clean and boring. Arraignment held. Charges read. Counsel appointed. Bail set. The kind of summary that could be copied and pasted for any petty case. No mention of the chaos. No mention of Hollis. No mention of Vince. No mention of anything. Then I saw the line. Reporter, sealed. I stared at it until my eyes hurt. That wasn't my name. That wasn't a person. That was a status like continued or dismissed. Like I was a stamp. I clicked into the document details because I couldn't stop myself. Restricted access. Sealed record. My fingers trembled above the keyboard, and a stupid thought hit me like a slap. I had sealed him, but the system had sealed me too. A file inside a file. A record inside the record. The vent above the kiosk made that throat-clearing sound. I jerked my head up before I could stop myself. Rule 5 had been for dim lights and exit signs, but it didn't matter anymore. The building didn't need rules now. It had me. The vent didn't look different, but the air around it felt watchful. I backed away from the kiosk, bumped into a man, and he swore, snapping his head around. "What the hell?" he said, rubbing his shoulder like he'd hit a wall. He stared straight at me, not at my face, at the spot where my shoulder had been. His eyes widened a fraction. "Did you just—" he started, then stopped, confusion overtaking anger. I leaned in. "Can you see me?" He swallowed. I can hear you. Look at me," I said, voice rough. "Look right at me." His eyes slid around like they couldn't settle. "I don't. There's nothing." He backed away, palms up like he was dealing with an animal. "Nope," he whispered. "Nope. I'm not doing this." He turned and walked fast toward the exit like the green signs were dragging him. I watched him go, and the worst part was realizing it. The building didn't have to make people blind. People did it on their own. They refused to look at something that didn't fit. I did what any sane person does when reality breaks. I tried to find a loophole. I drove to another county courthouse. Different building, different air, different vents. I walked in and asked the front desk for the list of approved reporters. The woman behind the desk smiled politely and asked my name. I said it. She typed. She frowned. "Not listed," she said. I gave her my agency name, my contract number, my vendor ID. She typed again. Her smile fell apart. "I'm not finding anything," she said quietly, and her eyes finally lifted toward my face and slid off, like her gaze hit a patch of glare. She looked unsettled, like she'd just walked into a room and forgot why. "Are you okay?" I asked. Her skin prickled. She rubbed her forearm. "Yeah, I just gotta chill." I left before she called security because I was learning the pattern. I went to my bank in person with my ID. The teller could see the ID. She could read it. She could follow the serial number and the address. She couldn't connect it to me. "There's no account under this name," she said, and her voice wasn't cruel, just baffled. "That's impossible," I said. "I've had that account for a decade." She glanced up, eyes sliding like they were looking at a spot on the wall. "Sir, I can't help if you're giving me false information." "I'm not," I snapped. "I'm standing right here." Her face tightened. Okay, I'm gonna get my manager." I walked out. I started living like a ghost with a lease. My landlord posted a notice on my door about unknown occupant because the automated system couldn't match my rent payments to a tenant profile. I tried to show up in person and talk. He stood in my living room, looking around, eyes refusing to land on me, talking to the air like he was auditioning for crazy. "I'm not renewing," he said, voice tight. This is some kind of scam." "I've lived here 3 years," I said, and my voice cracked because the anger was starting to rot into something else. "Look at me." He flinched at the sound. "Stop doing that," he snapped. Stop talking." "Where are you?" "Right in front of you," I said. He backed toward the door, hand trembling on his phone. "I'm calling the police." "Go ahead," I said, bitter. "They won't see me either." He didn't call. He just left fast, like if he moved quickly enough his brain wouldn't have to process the impossible. The only things that still responded to me were machines. Automatic doors opened when I approached. Motion sensors turned lights on. Toilets flushed. But people's brains slid off me like I was a smudge on glass. It would have been almost funny if I wasn't still a person inside my head. Weeks passed like that. Maybe months. Time got weird when you're not in anyone's calendar. I kept hearing vents. Not just at home. Everywhere. In restaurants. In laundromats. In the library. That little throat clearing, like something politely asking to be heard. Once in a grocery store, I stood in the aisle staring at soup because I realized I couldn't remember the last time someone had said my name out loud. The vent above the frozen food hummed. Then, under the hum, I heard typing. Not literal keys. The rhythm of it. The cadence of a stenographer writing in real time, fast and steady. My skin went cold. I pushed my cart away from the vent like it had heat. I went back to the courthouse at night because I couldn't stop myself. I parked across the street and sat in my car watching the dark windows. I told myself I was looking for a way to fix it. But if I'm honest, I was looking for proof that it had really happened. At 1:17 a.m., a light flicked on in courtroom 3. Not the overhead fluorescence. A dim desk lamp glow. I watched through the window as the lamp lit the reporter station. The empty chair was there again. The steno machine sat on the table. And the red record light blinked on, steady. No judge, no clerk, no lawyers. Just the machine recording nothing. Then, slowly, the vent above the jury box rattled like something inside it shifted. I couldn't see anything move, but the air in my car changed. My ears popped like altitude. My phone buzzed in my hand. A text from an unknown number. Just one word. Open. My throat closed. I dropped the phone like it burned. Another buzz. Another text. The minute. I stared at the screen, hands shaking so hard I couldn't pick it back up right away. Then, as if to make sure I understood it was speaking to me, my phone autocorrect suggestion bar changed. My name, my real name, appeared there as a suggestion. Then it flickered, and the suggestion replaced itself with unintelligible. I sat in the dark car, staring at that bracketed word, and my anger finally broke through the fear. Fuck you, I whispered, not because I thought it would hear, but because I needed to say something that was mine. The courthouse window light in courtroom 3 dimmed, like someone heard me and smiled. I drove home shaking, and I didn't go back for a long time, but it didn't matter. The courthouse had already followed me. One afternoon, I was in my apartment, staring at my steno machine like it was a pet that had betrayed me, when the vent above my kitchen cleared its throat again. I didn't move. I tried not to breathe loud. The throat clearing repeated. Patient. Then a voice came through, faint but clear, like it had learned how to use air ducts as a phone line. Reporter, it said. I felt my spine go cold. It wasn't Judge Acker's voice. It wasn't the defendant's voice either. It was something in between, like a person reading from a screen without understanding what the words meant. Verify the record, it said. I didn't answer. The vent made a soft clicking sound, like keys. Then it spoke again, and this time it used the hinge sound. The true name. It didn't say it with pride or rage. It said it like someone reading a file header. I stood up so fast my chair tipped. It clattered on the floor. Stop, I said, voice loud now. You're sealed. You're filed. You're not. The vent exhaled, warm and rotten. You wrote it, the voice said. My mouth went dry. I sealed you. I snapped, trembling. I buried you. A pause. Then, softly amused. And you sealed you. I sank onto the counter's edge, legs weak. Because that was the sick twist, wasn't it? I'd used the only tool I had, words in an official format, to trap it. And the record had used that same tool to trap me. I started doing something I never thought I'd do. I tried to get unsealed. I wrote letters. I went to judges' chambers. I stood outside security gates. I called hotlines and listened to robots tell me to press 1 for account access. I started recording myself on my phone, talking to the camera, say my name over and over, listing details, birth date, address, job history, like I could anchor myself with facts. When I played the videos back, my voice sounded fine, but the metadata on the files kept changing on its own. File name, reporter_sealed. Location tag, courtroom 3. Date created, NA. And once, just once, I played back a video and halfway through my own voice glitched. It got swallowed by static for a second, then returned. When I rewound and played that part again, the static spelled something if you listen hard enough. Open the minute. I threw my phone across the room and it shattered against the wall. Plastic and glass and battery pieces scattered on the carpet. I sat there breathing hard, staring at the broken device, and I realized something important. It didn't need my phone. It didn't need a courtroom. It needed my habit, my reflex, my need to capture, my need to make things official. Because I'm a reporter, I take chaos and turn it into a clean transcript. I turn screaming into a line with punctuation. I turn pain into a record number. That's what it wanted. That's how it fed. It didn't care about killing Hollis. Hollis was leverage. It wanted a minute. It wanted the written version of itself to exist in a system that humans trust more than their own senses. And the only person in that room whose job is literally to make truth out of sound was me. So it kept trying. Little things. A vent clearing its throat at the exact moment I started typing an email. A whisper in the duct when I opened a Word document. My autocorrect shifting anytime I try to type my own name into a form. Sometimes when I was exhausted and drifting, I'd hear the steno machine in my closet clicking softly by itself like someone practicing. I started unplugging it. I started locking it in my car. I started sleeping with earplugs. Nothing stopped the feeling that the record was still running somewhere, quietly without me. One night, I couldn't take it. I drove back to the courthouse, parked in the employee lot, and walked around back to the service entrance that I knew didn't always latch right. The door opened under my hand like it wanted me in. The hallway lights were off, but the exit signs glowed green the whole way, bright enough to paint the floor. I kept my eyes forward, not at the signs, because fear doesn't stop being fear just because you broke the rule once. Courtroom 3's door was unlocked. I pushed it open. The room smelled like stale coffee and paper and that faint penny rot smell that had clung to the vent air. The reporter's station sat empty, but the steno machine was there, waiting. The red record light blinked on. Steady. The real-time screen was on too, black background, white cursor blinking like a heartbeat. I stepped closer, slow. My skin prickled the closer I got, like static crawling up my arms. The vent above the jury box rattled. I heard that soft throat clearing, then a voice, close and warm, like breath behind metal. "Read back," it whispered. My stomach tightened. "No," I said, but my voice came out stronger than I expected. "No, I'm done." The cursor blinked. A line of text typed itself. "Verify the record." Then another line. "Open the minute." My hand shook. I backed away from the station, heart banging. "You're sealed," I said. "You're filed. You're trapped." The vent made that cough-laugh noise. A new line typed itself. "Sealed records can be unsealed." I stared at the sentence like it was a threat and a promise. My brain, stupid and desperate, lit up anyway. Because sealed records can be unsealed. In the real world, that's true. You petition. You argue. You get a judge to sign off. And if I could unseal myself. The cursor blinked again. Another line appeared. "I consent." Rule 3. The one phrase I'd been told never type. My whole body locked. The vent exhaled warm air, and I felt on the back of my neck like someone leaning close. "Say it," the voice whispered. "Type it. Consent. Unseal. Come back." I stood there shaking, staring at those two words on the screen. "I consent." And I saw it suddenly, sharp as a punch. That's what it had wanted from the start. Not just the name. Consent. The judge's authority means something only if you accept it. The record only matters if everyone agrees it's the record. Consent was the latch. If I typed it, I wasn't just capturing his words. I was giving permission. I stepped back farther until my hip hit the council table. "No," I said again, and it came out like a growl. "No, I'm not giving you that." The red record light blinked steady. The cursor blinked. The vent throat cleared again, this time impatient. Then the words on the screen started deleting themselves, one character at a time, clean and calm. I consent vanished. Open the minute vanished. Verify the record vanished. The screen cleared. For a second, nothing. Then it typed. Reporter, sealed. And under that, it typed a new line. Reporter, present. My breath caught. Because if it could mark me present, it could mark me anything. A soft scraping came from under the reporter's desk, fingernails on plastic, returning. I jerked my gaze to the clock above the bench, without meaning to. The second hand ticked. 1, 2, 3. On 4, the lights dimmed. Rule 5 screamed, and my eyes tried to snap to the exit signs like a starving animal. I clenched my jaw and forced my gaze down to the empty reporter station. The scraping under the desk moved closer to the chair wheels. The vent exhaled again, and this time I heard something else in it, faint, muffled, like a person crying through ductwork. Hollis, or an echo of him, or a file of him. My stomach rolled. I turned toward the door, and that's when the exit signs did it. They got brighter, not flickering, just brighter, like they were trying to pull my eyes into them. Like green mint, come here. I sprinted. I didn't try to be graceful. I didn't try to be quiet. I ran like a scared kid, shoes slapping tile, breath tearing out of my throat. Behind me, the vent rattled hard like something hit it from the inside. I didn't look back. I hit the hallway and the exit signs glowed, so bright they hurt, and I kept my eyes low and ran anyway because I wasn't playing by rules anymore. I was playing by survival. I burst out the service door into cold night air and kept running until my lungs burned. I didn't go back. After that, I stopped trying to get recognized. I stopped trying to fix it through normal channels. I started living small. Cash only. No online accounts. No forms. No, please verify your identity. I got used to being a voice. Sometimes that meant I could slip through spaces without being challenged. Most times it meant I could scream in a crowd and nobody would turn their head the right way. I learned weird tricks. If I stood behind someone and spoke, they'd assume the voice came from their own shoulder and whip around angry, arguing with empty air. If I spoke from across a room, they'd scan for speakers, for phones, for vents. Always vents. People instinctively look at vents when they hear a voice that doesn't have a body. Like somewhere in us, we already know that's where the building listens. I moved apartments. It didn't matter. Vents are everywhere. I tried living in an old place with radiators and open windows, no central air. The first night there, the radiator knocked, and in between knocks, I heard a soft steno rhythm in the pipes like someone tapping keys. I left. I tried sleeping in my car. I'd wake up with condensation on the inside of the windows like someone had been breathing in there with me. And sometimes, when the air was still, I'd hear it. The faint sound of paper turning, file tabs sliding, like a clerk sorting through records. Like the courthouse was paging through me. Every once in a while, I'd get brave enough to check public access again at a library computer, just to see if anything had changed. State V, Morrow stayed boring. Reporter, sealed stayed there like a joke nobody laughed at. Sometimes, in the corner of my vision, the cursor on the screen would blink a little faster like it was excited. Sometimes the browser would auto-fill the search bar with "Open the minute." I stopped typing my name anywhere because it started doing something worse. It started correcting it. If I wrote my name on paper, I'd look away and look back and swear the ink had smeared just enough to make it unreadable. If I said it out loud alone, my throat would hitch halfway through like my own mouth didn't want to cooperate. Like the record didn't want to acknowledge it. And then came the day I realized the last line on that procedure update wasn't a metaphor. If you break a rule, the record will continue without you. It meant the record doesn't need your hands. It can write without you. One afternoon, months after the arraignment, I was in a cheap motel because I'd been too exhausted to keep driving. The room smelled like bleach and old smoke. The AC unit in the wall rattled like it was dying. I sat on the bed and stared at my steno machine in its case. I hadn't touched it in weeks. I kept it like a relic, like a weapon I was afraid to pick up. The AC unit made that throat-clearing sound. Then, without me moving, the steno case latch clicked. My blood went cold. The lid rose a fraction like something inside was pushing. I didn't move. I didn't breathe. The lid lifted fully slow. My steno machine sat inside, dark. Then the red record light blinked on. The keys depressed by themselves, soft, rhythmic like invisible fingers. My laptop on the dresser, closed, unplugged, made a startup chime. The screen lit. A blank document opened, and text started appearing. Not my strokes, not anyone's audible speech. Just clean, perfect lines marching down the page. Reporter, sealed. Reporter, present. Reporter, consents. My throat locked. No, I whispered, voice thin. The document kept typing. Open the minute. I grabbed my laptop and slammed it shut so hard the hinge squealed. The typing continued anyway, keys clicking under my hands like the sound was coming from inside the plastic. I grabbed the steno machine and yanked it out of the case. It was warm, like it had been running for hours. The keys kept moving against my palms, trying to force my fingers into the pattern, like I wanted to use my hands as a stamp. I panicked and did the dumbest thing in the world. I threw it. It hit the motel wall and broke apart. Plastic cracked. Metal bits clattered. The red record light flickered and went dark. For 1 second, silence. Then the AC unit exhaled warm air, and a voice came through it, soft and close, like a whisper in your ear. You can't refuse read back forever, it said. I sat on the bed shaking, staring at the broken machine like it was a dead animal. You don't get to be sealed and silent, the voice said. A sealed record can still be opened. I swallowed hard, mouth full of iron taste. I'm not consenting, I said, louder, angry now, because fear had nowhere else to go. I never consented. You don't get that. The vent made a small laugh. It wasn't amused. It was patient. You typed it, it whispered. I shook my head hard like that could shake off reality. I didn't. The vent exhaled again, and this time it sounded almost sympathetic. You will, it said. I left the motel room with nothing but my wallet and the clothes on my back. I didn't check out. I didn't care. I drove until my eyes burned. Now I live in places I don't stay long enough to get noticed. I work jobs where nobody asks for paperwork. I pay cash. I keep my head down. Sometimes I find myself standing outside courthouses without meaning to. Like my body still thinks that building is where my life makes sense. Sometimes my phone autocorrect still tries to change my name into brackets. Sometimes, when I'm alone, I hear a vent clear its throat like it wants me to start typing again. And I keep my mouth shut. I keep my hand still. I don't open documents. I don't fill out forms. I don't sign anything I don't have to. Because I learned the hard way that what you asked me to do isn't tell scary stories. It's write rules that keep you alive. I broke one rule on purpose, and it worked. It just didn't save me.